All right, folks, welcome back to part 2 of this video. So we're making our Scrappy postage stamp 8-point star quilt block, and I'm using my postage stamp 6.5-inch square for the center. And then as you can see, this is where we left off from the first video, from the previous video. So we made our 8 HSTs, half square triangles. You need 8 units of the half square triangle, and you need 4 units for your corner. So these are all 3.5-inch squares. And now we are at the point where this is the layout of it, and now we want to sew our units together, sew the rows and the columns. So we're going to sew these two together and then sew those to the center. We're going to sew these 4 together. We're going to sew these 4 together and then attach them to the center. All right, so let's get to that right at this moment. So I am going to kind of shift these off to the side a little bit. I want to put these two together. So right sides together. Now, if you ironed it to the dark side, then that means these are not going to nest. So if you want to re-iron and maybe have them nest, feel free. So I want to make sure I'm doing this correctly, right? The points go in. Yes, the points go in. Okay. So I know I'm going to sew along this line. And I want to try to line it up as best as I can. And I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance right here. 1/4 inch seam allowance. Alright. Now I can chain piece at this point, but I'm really curious to see how these are, and they did pretty well. Alright, so I'm going to open up the seam. And I'm going to iron that seam open. As such. Okay. There we go. All right. Good. Okay. Now I'm going to do that for all of these. Now I know this one was at the bottom. Open this up and see how I did. Pretty well. Again, I'm opening up the seams. And you can't even see that. Sorry. Opening up the seams. Iron. Which means there will be a shadow behind that. I don't know. The whole time. But that's okay. So this went here. Now I'm going to iron or sew these on. Quarter inch seam allowance. I'm going to take these two, put these together. Ugh. Now remember, in a previous video, I was talking about making sure that you clean off all the fuzz on the underneath side of your quilt. Because any fuzz that you have on the back, when you quilt it, when you make your quilt sandwich, that fuzz will forever be seen from the top. So you just want to make sure that you clean up the back. Now, do you have to do it right at this second? No, you don't have to, but make sure you don't forget. Okay, so open this up. All right, I'm kind of getting myself a little... It's too much right here, guys. Trying to keep everything on video is making me confused. So I know this was the bottom. So I'm just going to try to figure myself out here. What was I doing? All right, like this. It doesn't really matter too much because it's not like I was following a pattern. But I just kind of wanted it to make sense. Like I just wanted things to just kind of make sense a little bit. All right, so actually I could do, let's see, that's opposite. I don't know how I had that. Do you see how that works there? Or maybe I want to do, well, I'm going to get something opposites anyway. So, does that look okay? Let's do this. I don't know, guys. I guess that looks okay. Alright, so I'm going to put this on here. Now, if you notice, this and this is quite a bit shorter than the edges of here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to square this up to 6.5 inches. So if I look at this, these two borders right here, this is kind of where you want the edge of the thing to be. So I'm going to trim a little bit of this off and a little bit of this off, this side. So I'm going to square this up to 6.5 inches. But before I do that, I want to measure this across. So this is almost 6 inches. Somewhere my seams got a little bit wonky, but almost 6 inches. Okay. And all right, so I'm gonna square this up to 6.5 inches. I'm gonna move on you. Okay, there we go. 6.5 inches. Alright, now these should measure perfectly. Great, and they do. Okay, so I'm going to iron this out just to make sure this is as flat as I can get it, because these little edges might actually become lost in the seam allowance, which I really didn't need to put boundary on all 4 sides, but I just felt like that was the right thing to do. Okay, 1/4 inch seam allowance. And if the seams get flipped up underneath, make sure you stop and flip them down. Alright, let's see how much of that shows. Not a whole lot, which is okay. Alright, so you can barely see that little border there. Same thing over here. Quarter inch seam allowance. Yep. You barely even see that too. And that's okay. It's almost like a flange. So there's a thing in quilting called a flange. So this is almost like a flange. That super thin border, which is less than 1/4 inch. Just a hair shy, just like a thread shy of 1/4 inch. This is probably 1/8 of an inch right here. Yeah. Alright, so let's throw this here. And if I measured it correctly, these seams should line up with these seams. And for the most part they do. I might need to stretch it out just a teeny tiny bit, but you don't want to stretch it too much. In fact, you don't really want to stretch your fabric at all, but that's a nice thing about working with cotton. You can do that to some degree. And if you want to, check the back. So I need to bring this up just a bit. Okay. And you can throw in a couple of pins if you want to. Alright, let's see what this looks like. So it's a little bit off. Oh, yeah, it's a little bit off. Had to go unplug my iron. because it dropped on the floor too many times, and now it doesn't, now the on button doesn't work. I just have to unplug it and plug it back in from the wall in order to turn the machine on. Okay, so here's our star so far. Not too bad. Yeah, it looks like a little flange. Alright, so let's finish this up. Still following the 1/4 inch seam allowance. And this should measure untrimmed at 12.5 inches. It may not. So again, we can always add a border to make it 12.5 inches. In our last corner here. Alright. There we go. And it goes right here. Okay. It's actually not too bad. Alright, the big reveal. The big reveal. Ta-da! Hey, that's not too bad. Where's my water? Steam. Okay, folks, here we are. Hey, that doesn't look too bad. All right. I love it. I love it. So here's our postage stamp, Scrappy postage stamp 8-point star block for October 2023. And you can see this little flange around. See how tiny this border is? That's like a tiny little flange around there. Nice. It's almost like it's supposed to be there. It's like it's supposed to be there. It works. Now, I didn't match up my star points very well, super well. This is a little short, and this is a little long, so it kind of, this row shifted a little bit. You can see that on the edges, it shifted this way. This is hanging over. So, can I take that out? Yeah, absolutely. I could, because that's just one, this is one sew line there, and I could, if I really wanted to, shift it, and that would line that up perfectly. But I'm not going to do that, because guess what? It's Scrappy. So, I love it. Look, guys. Nice. Yay! So, actually, I really do love this. I love this. Okay, so this is our Scrappy postage stamp 8-point star block for October 2023. Our star block of the month for our Sew a Year Full of Stars at Creating Hanley. Yay! Guys, now you want to make your quilt sandwich. Put your batting in here, put a backing on there, and then quilt that up. And let's see what it measures to. It should be 12.5 inches. And it is just a teeny tiny bit shy of 12.5 inches. Actually, it's pretty dead on. It's a tiny bit wonky, but it's, if you look at it, it's pretty dead on. So, if you do all your cutting right and your sewing right, you should end up with an unfinished, untrimmed 12.5 inch block. All right? Yeah. Now you can still put a border on around if you want to. You can still do that. So make your quilt sandwich, put your batting, put your backing, and then however pattern you want to quilt the top, go ahead and do that. Just quilt away. And then add this to the rest of your stars for our Sew a Year Full of Stars. At this point, we have well over 12 stars if you made every star block with me so far this year. So we have our 12. So I'm going to do a couple more stars, and then we will put all the stars together, and I'll show you how to sash those. And then we have our finished quilt, and I'll try to do that in November so it can be done well before Christmas if you want to give it as a gift. Okay? All right, guys, thanks for sewing along with me. I love this. I actually love this a lot. I love it a lot. So our Scrappy postage stamp 8-point star block. Have fun making this. Leave a comment. Thanks for playing along. I'll see you soon. Bye.